Here is what was reported on Iranian media, Tony. It says that it was two US missiles hit a telecommunication tower in the Syriac area. The Syriac area, you see here the Strait of Hormuz, and Syriac area is here. This is the strait here, and Syriac is here. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
this
Yep.
is the area that was hit by the two missiles. And when when it comes to what's going on, I think in the coming hours we're gonna have the Iranian response. They're gonna basically, from the Iranian behavior that I have witnessed so far, they're gonna assess which country was used for this attack, which bases were used. These fighter jets came from Saudi Arabia, maybe Jordan, far away from Jordan to and they're gonna hit the targets there. Let's see. So far, we haven't seen any sort of announcement on the part of Iranians, but this IRIB, this is a state media, they reported that two missiles hit the Syriac area, and this is what's going on. I think, Tony, one of the problems right now is that the United States is trying to manipulate the region politically. We had Marco Rubio coming to the region, to Bahrain, Kuwait, and UAE, to trying to convince them to put pressure on Oman. Then we had some sort of announcement from one of the Omani officials. We don't know who was that. He said, we're not going to charge anybody who uses this rate. Then we've seen Bloomberg reporting that Omani government was communicating with Europeans that each and everybody who wants to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they have to pay the fee. So you see different voices. They're somehow politically they're manipulating the region. And this is part of the game that the United States is playing with Iran. And that's why you see IRGC coming out, because not only because of this rate, but the case of Lebanon, as you've mentioned. These are two complicated situations and are coming together. I think there is no understanding between the two sides, and at least they're not getting to the point to understand each other's position.
The United States, both politically and militarily, are shaping conditions to go back into a shooting war, kinetic war with Iran, to try to redo, if you will, an ending for another attempt at a win. This agreement, this 14-point MOU, was handedly an Iranian victory, and so now the United States is looking at ways to manipulate the region through diplomacy, or threats, or whatever types of leverage the United States is attempting to use on other Gulf Coast nations, and all for the purposes of rebuilding, or at least reestablishing some sort of basis of coalition, or at least basis of manipulation to then conduct strikes against Iran into next military movement. And again, the area that you just pointed out where these strikes happened in near Sarik and Sarik Island, the IRGC's second division headquarters of the IRGC Navy and the Iranian Navy are located there. So the Strait of Hormuz is specifically an area within the Iranian construct of command and control, where the IRGC have a component of control and the Iranian Navy have a component of control. And Sirik is one of those locations, but also an area of communication. So why again do we see, where you just pointed out there, if you look at the strait here, why again do we see, and this is a map that we used from 3 weeks ago talking about this, where those strikes are circled. Again, we're seeing that concentration of strikes in that area on the Gulf of Oman side, if you will, of the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran does possess absolute ability to control physically, militarily, that region, that spot. And it's basically from Bandar Abbas down the coastline, Sadiq, and in there you've got the that point of Kashem Island, and then you have Hormuz Island. So we know that just below that, basically where Sarik is, parallel to that, is where the U.S. had its distant blockade, kind of in that area, and in north of that into the strait is where the United States was attempting to try to regain or gain some type of physical control to take that control away from Iran. And now what we see is the United States is going right back to targeting those exact same areas. So the question then again is why? So if we're looking at the now what Iranians potential calculated response is okay, where did these strikes come from? Who supported it? Where did they emanate? What nation helped them either in launching or whatever the case may be? Because if we're going to respond militarily, it makes sense to respond specifically to where that emanated from as a response. And I think the Iranian response will show that it's a very specific, coordinated response to we're responding to this specifically because of this. Well, the United States continues to go into every opportunity to fire missiles or fire upon Iran with going right back to striking in the same spot again. There's a reason for that. The United States is attempting to stack the cards, rearm, and go back into a kinetic war with Iran to try to reset the conditions or better conditions in this MOU. Because in terms of the U.S. position, though it is the best the U.S. can hope to get, it's still a disaster for Donald Trump and the rhetoric of why we went to this war. It's a disaster. So I think that this is an attempt to go at it again, so to speak. And I think that Iran's response is coming, and that it will be very focused, and it will be proportional, and it will be in direct response to the strikes that were conducted against the sovereign territory of Iran over the last 24 hours. So I think we're going to see an Iranian response.
I think if they respond, it's going to be on Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, as it was before. I don't see any attack on Saudi Arabia or Qatar.
No, I think out of very likely being Kuwait, Bahrain, or Jordan, likely any type of force projection, whether it's the firing of missiles, the assets to fire missiles, or the assets to guide and control and terminal guidance for missiles, is likely going to come from Kuwait. So is it likely that we'll see a response in Kuwait? Yeah. Ali Al Salim or Arif Jan or Camp Buehring or wherever else we may have assets. Certainly Kuwait is a prime target or a prime suspect, if you will. So yeah, I don't think that Iran's response is going to go deep and wide. I think it's going to be very specific.
Yeah. Part of the problem, Tony, is in Lebanon. And as we talk, people are protesting in Lebanon. And here is the footage. One of the footages in Lebanon. What's going on? They are reacting to what has happened between the government, the Lebanese government, and Israelis, which was a U.S. brokered sort of agreement between the two sides today. And looking at looking at the clauses of this agreement, it says Israel declares no territorial ambitions in Lebanon while staying exactly where it is until it unilaterally signs off on disarmament. It says that they're going to stay in the occupied territory that they're in right now until you have some sort of disarmament of Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah being disarmed before Israel leaving Lebanon. This is one part. And they said Lebanon and the United States jointly commit to financially strangling any group tied to the resistance. Hezbollah is never named in the text. And it seems that the United States is going to cooperate with the government in Lebanon to somehow put pressure, economic pressure on Hezbollah. And it says resistance. It doesn't mention Hezbollah. So basically what they're doing is trying to achieve what they couldn't achieve, militarily in the southern part of Lebanon. And that's why I think looking at what is going on, and here is what was reported on Israeli media. They're achieving, by the way, I think they're achieving their goal in southern part of in Lebanon, because they're basically what was reported on channel 13. Here is what they said.
זה נראה שאנחנו מובילים את מדינת לבנון לעבר מלחמת אזרחים, אולי זה לא רע לנו. שהממשלה הלבנונית תילחם בחיזבאללה.
זו השאיפה מההתחלה, לא בטוח כרגע שבמצבה הנוכחי יש לה את הכוח, אז היום עוד שני איתותים נקרא להם, עוד פעם תקיפה של תשתיות קשרים מעל הליטני.
Yeah. And you see what has been said, that Israel plan in Lebanon is to divide the country and plunge it into a civil war to force the Lebanese government into a military confrontation with Hezbollah. This is literally what's going on with the sort of deal with the United States. And how do you see the things, what's going on in Lebanon? What's your understanding of that?
Well, the only nation in the world that lies more flagrantly and blatantly than the United States is Israel. They're the world champions of just straight up lying. So in this agreement, we have no ambitions for any territorial gain of your country of Lebanon, but we're staying put. We're staying put right here where we are in the south. They are occupying. Israel is an occupying force. They are an occupier of Lebanon, period. And the very first point of the MOU, tying it back to the MOU with Iran, is that the territorial integrity of Lebanon. It doesn't say territorial integrity and sovereignty of all nations is a principle. It specifically says Lebanon. So Israel continuing to occupy 1 inch inside of Lebanon is violating that MOU, is violating that. Strikes, big or small, violating that. Any threats to the sovereignty of the country of Lebanon, violating that. And to your point, what we're seeing right now is the United States and Israel attempting to put a drive that wedge between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government to foment civil war between North and South. And what do you think Israel is going to do if that civil war happens, if that chaos occurs? I'll tell you exactly what Israel is going to do. They're going to move in and occupy everything in the south all the way to the Litani River. And then they're going to make the premise of, oh, well, this is a buffer zone to protect us from what the Lebanese government can't control. And so we're going to dictate it. We've seen this story over and over and over again in this specific region, whether it be in Gaza, whether it be in the West Bank, whether it be in Lebanon, whether it be in countries that the United States has fought our wars and always made excuses to stay and occupy. That this is the United States and Israel establishing pretense for further occupation, deeper occupation, a stronger occupation under the pretense of, well, we're just protecting our borders. And it would be unwise for the Lebanese government and for the people of Lebanon to fall into that trap. And that's exactly what this is. This is a trap where the bait is being set by the United States and Israel in hopes that the Lebanese government will take that and start fighting against Hezbollah, which will only end badly for the government of Lebanon. So when you look at what they're trying, and then there's these veiled threats from Donald Trump saying that, maybe we'll just call in the Syrians to do it. Maybe we'll call in Jelani. And when you look at that and adding even more to it, talk about the pretense for a perfect recipe of disaster from which Israel can take advantage of that chaos. Imagine that type, where Syria is fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah and the Lebanese government are fighting in their civil war. Imagine the opportunity then for Israel to come in and seize and occupy permanently all of that terrain that they currently occupy, to include into the Golan Heights and parts of Syria. It is a perfect pretense for exactly what Israel's ambitions in that particular part of the region are. And the United States is knowingly and willingly going along with it. And I think it's disgusting. And I think that the people of Lebanon need to see that for what it is, and not take that bait, not fall into that trap of setting the pretense for further U.S. Israeli colonialism.
Yeah, here is PBS News reported, Tony, that a U.S. official reported 6 U.S. military aircraft struck Iranian targets, including radar installation and missile and drone storage facilities in Syria, Iran. This was confirmed by PBS News. But when it comes, Tony, to the situation you mentioned, Syria, I think the Syria is so complicated. You see the HTS, these ISIS coming in power in Syria. Then you see different factions within Syria. These people who came to Syria, these are somehow fighting each other in Syria. And Donald Trump, when he's talking about sending or letting the Syrian government helping the United States in Lebanon, I think they're talking about these factions in Syria that are fighting among each other, then sending them to maybe to the northern part of Lebanon to make even the chaos more, the situation more chaotic in Lebanon. So how do you see that possibility?
Well, Israel exists and operates like an infection, and infections strive in when there's chaos, or when things are dirty, or when things are irritated, and that's exactly what Israel is attempting to do: create all those hospitable conditions for infection to take root, for a parasite to grow. So that is exactly what Israel is attempting to do in Syria and Lebanon. And what perfect elements brought together. Factions of fighters from Syria fighting in northern Lebanon. Obviously, Hezbollah will have a response. That's not going to be a clean fight between factions in Syria saying, okay, we delineate between A and B and that's it. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get ugly. You have an insurgency fighting unconventional warfare in an asymmetric way between a government, a resistance group, and another resistance group within another resistance of another country, potentially all coming together, fighting each other, where you have Israel with its, I can imagine just Israel with its napkin in its collar at the dinner table, just waiting to start carving up pieces of Syria and Lebanon. And that's how Israel exists. That's how Israel, that is Israel's foreign policy: foment war, infect, parasite, take. Then when the smoke settles and you look around, you're like, oh man, Israel's got all this. Israel's got 80% of Gaza. How did that happen? Well, there's a ceasefire, there's a peace deal, nothing to see here. War kicks off with Iran and the world shifts its attention. And while that happens, Israel takes 80% of Gaza and continues to shut off aid and continues to bomb it daily. Same thing in Lebanon. While the world was looking at Iran in those opening days, is when Israel pushed really hard into the south, all the way in their movements to the Litani. And the world was like, whoa, what's going on over here now? Hey, we're paying attention to this. What's going on over here? And Israel's like, oh, nothing. Just, just creating a buffer zone. They're going to do the exact same thing. It's what Israel does. And as I've said before, and I will say it again, that the United States should focus on the MOU, normalizing relations diplomatically and economically with Iran in the region and other regional leaders, regional powers, and respecting the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Lebanon. And it seems like the consistent factor in preventing all of that, the consistent problem, is our relationship with Israel. And if you look at these roads that the United States is now going down, the situation we're in right now, where the United States just conducted strikes against Iran, where there will very likely be an Iranian response. And maybe now that we know what the strikes consisted of, it could be against in Saudi Arabia, because what airbase either Jordan or Saudi Arabia from the air base for at least the refueling or the sortie out of that strike would have emanated from at least the refueling or the jets themselves. So that's a big question. It could the response could be against Saudi Arabia. So when you look at the dynamics right now, we're in the powder keg now has been in this period of negotiation and peace. More dynamite was packed into the powder keg, and now when that thing explodes, it's going to be worse than it was a month ago or 2 months ago. And it seems to me that the match is struck. The powder keg is full. What's going to set it off? Could it be what we're seeing right now? I think so, because Iran is not going to abandon or leave Lebanon as an open-ended question that just continues to go down this road of the United States ignoring the obvious fact that Israel is still occupying Lebanon. There are still strikes being conducted in Lebanon, and the United States is not meeting its part of the MOU. And I think the world sees that clearly. The United States is not fooling Iran. Iran sees it for what it is. So I think the United States has to make a clear decision as to, is it America's interests first and moving forward with these agreements, or once again, as always, putting Israel first and following them into further conflict and chaos in the region, which is exactly what Israel wants.